Okay, I'm going to read the chapter or the segment. It's not like a full chapter. The segment I read this morning that recorded very poorly. I'm going to read that again, but I'm going to start off this recording by reading this again because I just love it so much. And it is a couple of these I really love. This one we'll start with. Well, let's read this real quick. Okay, in spite of the fact that the Catholic Church admits the occurrence of somnia e Dio missa, dreams sent by God, most of its thinkers make no serious attempt to understand dreams. I doubt whether there is a Protestant treatise or doctrine that would stoop so low as to admit the possibility that the vox Dei, which I looked up, means the voice of God. And when I looked it up, it came out as vox populi vox Dei, which is the voice of the people is the voice of God. It's a Latin phrase that suggests that the collective opinions of the populace hold divine significance or reflect a higher truth. It can also refer to the general sentiment or the consensus of the people, but that's the whole term, which is vox populi vox Dei, but the actual vox Dei means voice of God. Okay. Most of its thinkers make no serious attempt to understand dreams. I doubt whether there is a Protestant treatise or doctrine that would stoop so low as to admit the possibility that vox Dei might be perceived in a dream. But if a theologian really believes in God, by what authority does he suggest that God is unable to speak through dreams? I've spent more than a half a century in investigating natural symbols, and I have come to the conclusion that dreams and their symbols are not stupid or meaningless information. Meaningless. On the contrary, dreams provide the most interesting information for those who take the trouble to understand their symbols. The results, it is true, have little to do with such worldly concerns as buying and selling, but the meaning of life is not exhaustively explained by one's business life, nor is the deep desire of the human heart answered by a bank account, nor is the deep desire of the human heart answered by a bank account. In a period of human history when all available energy is spent in the investigation of nature, very little attention is paid to the essence of man, which is the psyche, although many researchers are made into its conscious functions. But the really complex and unfamiliar part of the mind from which symbols are produced is still virtually unexplored. It seems almost incredible that though we receive signals from it every night in our dreams, deciphering these communications seems too tedious for any but a very few people to bother with it. Man's greatest instrument, the psyche, is little thought of and is often directly mistrusted and despised. It's only psychological. Too often means it is nothing. Where exactly does this immense prejudice come from? We have obviously been so busy with the question of what we think that we entirely forgot to ask what the unconscious psyche thinks about us. The idea of Sigmund Freud confirmed for most people the existing contempt for the psyche. Before him, it had been merely overlooked and neglected. It has now become a dump for moral refuse. This modern standpoint is surely one-sided and unjust. It does not even accord with the known facts. Our actual knowledge of the unconscious shows that it is a natural phenomenon, and that, like nature herself, it is at least natural. It contains all aspects of human nature. The psyche contains all aspects of human nature. Light and dark, beautiful and ugly, good and evil, profound and silly, smart and stupid. I added that. The study of individual as well as of collective symbolism is an enormous task, and one that has not yet been mastered. But a beginning has been made at last. The early results are encouraging, and they seem to indicate an answer to so many far unanswered questions of present-day mankind. Okay, so now I'm going to read again what I read this morning. This is a short segment. It's Ancient Myths and Modern Man, written by Joseph L. Henderson. The Eternal Symbols. And they started with this picture of a ceremonial mask from the island of New Ireland, New Guinea. The ancient history of man is being meaningfully rediscovered today in the symbolic images and myths that have survived ancient man. As archaeologists dig deep into the past, it is not the events of historical time that we learn to treasure, but the statues, designs, and templates and languages that tell of old beliefs. Other symbols are revealed to us by philologists and religious historians who can translate these beliefs into intelligible modern concepts. Now, so my dad had a master's degree in theology. He was a very smart human being. He went to school for 8 years to be a minister, and that degree in ministry sat in the back of his drawer. He didn't believe in God anymore after he graduated seminary. He was very smart. I wish he was still alive. He probably knows so much about this stuff. He could tell you the Latin root of practically every word, Greek or Latin root. And he was amazing, just an amazing person. And he committed suicide. And unfortunately, he had written a suicide letter, and it was chock full of symbolism. And unfortunately, when I was dating my ex-boyfriend, it was an accident. We were throwing a bunch of stuff from our van into the dumpster, and my dad's duffel bag full of writings and letters and stuff was in the van. And my boyfriend at the time thought it was garbage and threw it into the dump. It's a shame, but I'm not mad. It was an accident. But it sure would be wonderful to have those things again. Anyway, as archaeologists dig deep into the past, it is not the events of historical time that we learn to treasure, but the statues, designs, temples, and languages that tell of old beliefs. Other symbols are revealed to us by the philologists and religious historians who can translate these beliefs into intelligible modern concepts. These, in turn, are brought to life by the cultural anthropologists. I used to love to read about anthropology when my son Bodhi was just a little infant and he'd be laying in his crib taking a nap. I had an anthropology book that just sat on the dining room table, and I would read it just for fun because that kind of stuff just fascinates me. And like I said in my live recording this morning that didn't take, I personally believe in the essence and energy of a place, like long after, so it's like an ancestors, long after the people of the place have passed on, their energy and vibrations still live on. And I oftentimes, when I'm living in an area, I look up the tribe of Native Americans who first lived there. It's interesting, when I was sharing a space with someone I considered to be a friend, I was sharing a space with him for a short period of time in a small town in Ohio, Perry County. I looked up what Indians lived there, and it was the Mingo Indians. And and in Logan as well. And the Mingo Indians are a tribe of trickster Indians. And let me tell you, I felt that vibe for sure. So anyway, I haven't looked up, I'm in Virginia currently, near Martinsville, and I have not yet looked up what Native American tribe resided here first, but it is fascinating, for me at least, to think about that, because I think energy lives on, like my son, who is now passed away physically, not with me. The energy of what he represented and who he was, and every person's life he ever touched or made a difference in, still lives within us and all around us. I am certain of that. See, the wind is blowing right now. Is that you, Bodhi? My love, my love, my beloved Bodhi. Just want to feel him for a minute. My beloved Bodhi. These, in turn, are brought to life by the cultural anthropologists. So a little chipmunk just ran down in front of me and down into a hole in the dirt. Cute. I have to look up the spiritual meaning of chipmunk. See, to me, that means something, and it's actually exactly what we just talked about in our last segment that we read. As I am here feeling the essence of my deceased son and really picking up on his energy, a chipmunk runs across my pathway. So to me, that has some significant meaning to it, and I'm going to look up and find out what it could possibly mean. Okay. All such researchers, okay, hold on. They can show that the same symbolic patterns can be found in the rituals or myths of small tribal societies still existing, unchanged for centuries, on the outskirts of civilization. Reminds me of another book I have that I will read eventually on my channel called The Flower of Life. And that author, Drunvali, I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, points out how the flower of life and some of these symbols are all over the world, in carvings of stones and in trees when they're cut open this way, and in dandelions and grapefruits. It's beautiful, fascinating. I love it. Anyway, all such researchers have done much to correct the one-sided attitude of those modern men who maintain that such symbols belong to the peoples of antiquity or backward modern tribes, and are therefore irrelevant to the complexities of modern life. In London or New York, we may dismiss the fertility rites of Neolithic man as archaic superstition. If anyone claims to have seen a vision or heard voices, he is not treated as a saint or an oracle. It is said he is mentally disturbed. Give him pills, and let Big Pharma make money off of his psychic abilities. We read the myths of the ancient Greeks or the folk stories of Native Americans, but we fail to see any connection between them and or attitudes to the heroes or dramatic events of today. Yet the connections are there, and the symbols that represent them have not lost their relevance for mankind. One of the main contributions of our time to the understanding and revaluing of such eternal symbols has been made by Dr. Jung's School of Analytical Psychology. It has helped to break down the arbitrary distinction between primitive man, to whom symbols seem a natural part of everyday life, and modern man, for whom symbols are apparently meaningless and irrelevant. As Dr. Jung has pointed out earlier in this book, the human mind has its own history, and the psyche retains many traces left from previous stages of its development. I'm going to read that again. As Dr. Jung has pointed out earlier in this book, the human mind has its own history, and the psyche retains many traces left from previous stages of its development or past lives. I believe in past lives. More than this, the contents of the unconscious exert a formative influence on the psyche. Consciously, we may ignore them, but unconsciously, we respond to them and to the symbolic forms, including dreams in which they express themselves. The individual may feel that his dreams are spontaneous and disconnected, but over a long period of time, the analyst can observe a series of dream images and note that they have a meaningful pattern. And by understanding this, his patient may eventually acquire a new attitude to life. Some of the symbols in such dreams derive from what Dr. Jung has called the collective unconscious. That is, that part of the psyche which retains and transmits the common psychological inheritance of mankind. These symbols are so ancient and unfamiliar to modern man that he cannot directly understand or assimilate them. It is here that the analyst can help. Possibly, the patient must be freed from the encumbrance of symbols that have grown stale and inappropriate. Or possibly, he must be assisted to discover the abiding value of an old symbol that, far from being dead, is seeking to be reborn in modern form. Before the analyst can effectively explore the meaning of symbols with a patient, he must himself acquire a wider knowledge of their origins and significance. So when I wrote my book, during an active state of spiritual emergency, coping with the fact that my son had been killed, and it was illegally allowed to happen, and people collected large sums of money due to his death. This caused me to go into a spiritual emergency, and I was having spontaneous thoughts, visions, and the like that I added into the facts of my book, not having any prior knowledge of some of them besides the religious terms, because I was in the Baptist church for a short period of time. But other than that, a lot of them just came to me through a higher source. So I had no knowledge, and I'm starting to have knowledge because I'm trying to find out what exactly happened to me. Anyway, before the analyst can effectively explore the meaning of symbols with a patient, he must himself acquire the wider knowledge of their origins and significance. For the analogies between ancient myths and the stories that appear in the dreams of modern patients are neither trivial nor accidental. They exist because of the unconscious minds of modern man preserves the symbol-making capacity that once found expression in the beliefs and rituals of the primitive. And that capacity still plays a role of vital psychic importance. In more ways than we realize, we are dependent on the messages that are carried by such symbols. And both our attitudes and behaviors are profoundly influenced by them. In wartime, for instance, one finds increased interest in the works of Homer, Shakespeare, or Tolstoy. And we read with a new understanding those passages that give war its enduring or archetypical meaning. They evoke responses. They evoke a response from us that is much more profound than it could be from someone who has never known the intense emotional experience of war. The battles on the plains of Troy were utterly unlike the fighting at Agincourt or Borodino, yet the great writers are able to transcend the differences of time and place and express themes that are universal. We respond because these themes are fundamentally symbolic. A more striking example should be familiar to anyone who has grown up in a Christian society. At Christmas, we may express our inner feeling for the mythological birth. So I love this line because any fundamental Christian hearing this is going to probably scream sacrilegious. I love this line. At Christmas, we may express our inner feeling for the mythological birth of a semi-divine child. Even though we may not believe in the doctrine of the virgin birth of Christ or have any kind of conscious religious faith, unknowingly we have fallen in with the symbolism of rebirth. I'm wearing a phoenix on my neck right now. This is a relic of an immensely older solstice festival, which carries the hope that the fading winter landscape of the northern hemisphere will be renewed. For all our sophistication, we find satisfaction in this symbolic festival, just as we join with our children at Easter in the pleasant ritual of Easter eggs and Easter rabbits. But do we understand what we do or see the connection between the story of Christ's birth, death, and resurrection and the folk symbolism of Easter? Usually, we do not even care to consider such things intellectually. Yet they complement each other. Christ's crucifixion on Good Friday seems at first sight to belong to the same pattern of fertility symbolism that one finds in the rituals of such other saviors as Osiris, Tammuz, Orpheus, and Balder. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. They too were of divine or semi-divine birth. They flourished, were killed, and were reborn. They belonged, in fact, to cyclic religions in which the death and rebirth of the God King was an eternally reoccurring myth. But the resurrection of Christ on Easter Sunday is much less satisfying from a ritual point of view than is the symbolism of the cyclic religions. For Christ ascends to sit at the right hand of God, the Father. His resurrection occurs once and for all. It is this finality of the Christian concept of the resurrection. The Christian idea of the Last Judgment has a similar closed theme that distinguishes Christianity from other God-King myths. It happened once, and the ritual merely commemorates it. But this sense of finality is probably one reason why early Christians, still influenced by pre-Christian traditions, felt that Christianity needed to be supplemented by some elements of an older fertility ritual. They needed the reoccurring promise of rebirth, and that is what is symbolized by the egg and the rabbit of Easter. I have taken two quite different examples to show how modern man continues to respond to profound psychic influences of a kind that consciously he dismisses as little more than the folk tales of superstitious and uneducated peoples. But it is necessary to go much further than this. The more closely one looks at the history of symbolism and at the role that symbols have played in the life of many different cultures, the more one understands that there is also a recreative meaning in these symbols. Some symbols relate to childhood and the transition to adolescence, others to maturity, and others again to the experience of old age when man is preparing for his inevitable death. Dr. Jung has described how the dreams of a girl of 8 contained the symbols one normally associates with old age. Her dreams presented aspects of initiation into life as belonging to the same archetypical pattern as initiation into death. This progression of symbolic ideas may take place, therefore, within the unconscious mind of modern man, just as it took place in the rituals of ancient societies. The crucial link between archaic and primitive myths and the symbols produced by the unconscious is of immense practical importance to the analyst. It enables him to identify and to interpret these symbols in a context that gives them historical perspective as well as psychological meaning. I shall now take some of the more important myths of antiquity and show how and to what purpose they're analogous to the symbolic material that we encounter in our dreams. And that's it for this segment. It was a short one. I'm going to post it, put a title on it, and I will be pre-recording all my videos from here on out. Maybe occasionally I'll do a live just to maybe chat with some of my followers. But I do welcome any comments on the material. Please be respectful and have a wonderful Wednesday.